Hi everybody, I hope you've kind of thawed out from all the snow and all the wintry weather that we've had over the past couple of weeks. Hopefully we can get through the next couple of weeks without any snow, but who knows what might happen. I've seen it snow in April. Anyway, wanted to come to you today just to recap some of the information that we had covered last Monday, I believe. And if this is my Wednesday class looking at this particular video as well, we haven't covered it all because we have missed the last two Wednesdays due to the weather. However, I will just go ahead and introduce or reintroduce to the morning class the information that we covered regarding Chapter 9, which are muscles. The first things that we talked about are the points of attachments of muscles. And prior to that, I think in my morning class, I did ask you to reference Chapter 8. There's a section in Chapter 8 that talks about joint movements, and it goes over some specific terminology that you need to know, such as abduction, adduction, flexion, extension, rotation, circumduction, hyperextension, extension, pronate or pronation, supination. All that information is located in Chapter 8. And this is important because the muscles work in conjunction with the skeletal system to allow us to move. And in Chapter 8, it goes over all the different types of joint movements that our skeletal system and our muscular system allow us to do. So please make sure that you reference that information in Chapter 8. At the end of this video, what I'm going to do, well, not at the end of the video, what I'm going to do in Blackboard is also post a sheet for you that I believe that I have in regard to the information that I'm going to cover. So it will go over the different types of muscles, what an origin and insertion are, so on and so forth. So you'll have that to reference. One thing that I want to go ahead and introduce now are the different types of muscle attachments. I think I introduced this to you when we talked about the skeletal system because we talked about the attachment of bones to bones and muscle to bone. But it's worth noting again here in Chapter 9 because I also introduced to you the word aponeurosis, which is a point of attachment of one muscle to another. So just to review those, tendons attach muscle to bone. Ligaments attach bone to bone, and an aponeurosis is what will connect, is dense connective tissue that connects one muscle to another. So it's very important that we know those concepts first. Okay, so moving into the muscular system now, the immovable point of attachment, that point of a muscle that cannot be moved, is called its origin. And just like the word origin, it's where it starts or its beginning. The movable point of attachment is called the insertion. So the insertion for, let's just say, frontalis. Hopefully you know where that muscle is. I told my morning class it was really important to make sure that you knew the information about the skeletal system because the skeletal system can help you with some of the names of the muscles. So frontalis is actually the muscle that's over the frontal bone, while occipitalis is that muscle that's at the back of the head that's covering the occipital bone. So the name of this particular muscle that's connected by an aponeurosis in the middle is called occipitofrontalis. So occipitalis is the origin. That's the point at which it's immovable. We can't move that portion. However, when frontalis contracts, it raises our eyebrows. So we've got the origin, we've got the insertion, and then with some muscles, we have, well, not with some muscles, all muscles have the in-between portion that's called the belly. The best way to demonstrate this is to show you, or to give you an example. Okay, everybody has one of these. The sweatshirt is kind of rough. All right, so bicep is the muscle. The origin is in our shoulder, while the insertion, the movable point of attachment, is right here around the elbow. But in between the two, when it contracts, you have what's called the belly of the muscle. So we've got the origin, immovable, the insertion, the movable, and the belly is the fleshy part of the muscle that's in between. Okay, so now we have that concept down. we covered information in regard to how to name muscles. There are 8 mechanisms in which we can actually name muscles. They can be named, number 1, and I'm just going to write these down so I can make sure that I have them all. Number 1 would be naming a muscle according to its size. And these are in no particular order, just how I can remember them off the top of my head. So the name of a muscle that would be a muscle that's named according to its size. We're all sitting on it right now. Gluteus maximus. Maximus is telling you that it's a large muscle. And if there's a maximus, there's a minimus somewhere as well. So gluteus maximus will be the example of the name of a muscle named according to its size. We also have muscles that are named according to their location. I just gave you an example of one. Frontalis is a muscle that's over the frontal bone. We also have temporalis, which is a muscle that's over the temporal bone. Occipitalis, transverse abdominis. And abdominis is the word that's telling you where that muscle is located. Okay, the third way that we can name muscles would be according to their shape. Perfect example, deltoid. Deltoid is the triangular muscle of our shoulder, so it's named according to its shape, triangular. We also have trapezius. Trapezius is trapezoid shaped, and it's the muscle that's right at the back of the neck in between the shoulders, and it's kind of shaped like a trapezoid. Sorry, looking at the dog. Another way our muscles are named, they can be named according to, let's see, size, shape, location. Oh, number of heads or the divisions of attachment. This is what I'm talking about. Biceps breaking, which is in our arm. It's in our arm, but it's telling you how many divisions of attachment it has. Biceps, bi meaning 2. Triceps along the back of the arm, 3 divisions of attachment. So those are 2 examples for those. They can also be named according to their action, what the muscle does. So even if you weren't sure what depressor anguli oris, where it was, if you're not sure of that, kind of try to figure it out based on the name of the muscle. It's telling you what it does. Depressor, meaning it pushes something down. Anguli sounds like the angle of something. And oris, if you didn't know what oris is, if you think about the oral cavity, that's your mouth. So that muscle is actually responsible for depressing the angle of the mouth. This is what it does. Let me see if I can do it. See how it's pulling the angle of my mouth in the inferior direction? There you go. Depressor anguli oris. Another example could be levator palpebrae superioris. Now you might not have any clue where that muscle is, but it's telling you that it levitates or lifts something superiorly. Levator palpebrae superioris. The word in the middle, palpebrae, actually means eye or eyelid. So levator palpebrae superioris actually aids in elevating the eye superiorly. Okay. Muscles can also be named according to their origin and insertion. Now remember, I told you earlier that the origin is the immovable point of attachment and the insertion is the movable point of attachment. So these muscles, the first part of the muscle's name will be its origin, while the last part of the muscle's name will be its insertion. And there may be something in between to tell you that it's crossing over something else. So my example for that, I can first give you occipitofrontalis. That's the muscle that I told you that's from here, occipitalis, the aponeurosis is in the middle, and the insertion is frontalis. That muscle also has another name that it can be called, and that will be epicranius. Now, if it's called occipitofrontalis, it's named according to its origin and its insertion. But if it's referenced as epicranius, then it's being named according to its location. Epi meaning above, cranius, the cranium. Another example of a muscle that's named according to origin and insertion would be sternocleidomastoid. Okay, and I think I may have said something to this, spoken about this muscle before, but it's the muscle that creates the widest part of the neck. I'll show you here. This is it right here, sternocleidomastoid. And it starts at the sternum, that's its origin. Cleido, it actually crosses over the clavicle and it inserts at the mastoid process of the temporal bone. Sternocleidomastoid. We also use that muscle as an anatomical guide to help us locate the common carotid arteries. Typically, the common carotid arteries lie along the medial border of that particular muscle. So when we make our incision and as we're moving through the tissue, once we come across that muscle, we know that the vessel is deep to that muscle. Muscles can also be named according to the direction of the fibers. So, I gave an example earlier of transverse abdominis. Well, transverse is telling you the directions of the fibers of the muscle that's located on the abdomen. So transverse is indicating that it's a horizontal type direction. Another muscle, external oblique. If there's an external, there's always an internal as well. So external oblique would be the one that is closer to the surface, and oblique is telling you that the fibers run in a diagonal fashion. And then finally, number 8, I can use the last two examples that I gave you, whether or not the muscle is superficial or if it's deep. If the muscle is superficial, we know that it's closer to the surface. If the muscle is deep, then it's further away from the surface. The examples that I just provided you with will serve for number 8 as well. So external oblique is telling you it's closer to the surface, while internal oblique is telling you that it's deep or further away from the surface. So I've now provided you with the 8 mechanisms of naming muscles. And in addition to that, I've provided examples of all of the naming muscle categories. So please make sure that you know the mechanisms by which they can be named and an example of each one. Okay. Now, also I introduced in the morning class, and like I said, evening class, you haven't had any of this, but I'm going to put it up there for you so you can review it at your will. We talked about the muscles of facial expression, and those were the only muscles that we covered prior to dealing with the weather. So I'll just briefly go over those. They are in Chapter 9, and it's the first table, and it lists all of the muscles of facial expression. The muscles of facial expression included occipitofrontalis, which I've already told you that it's also referred to as epicranius. It's located at the top of the head, and the contraction of those muscles raises the eyebrows. Those two muscles are connected by an aponeurosis that's referred to as Galea aponeurotica. That was the first muscle that we identified. The next muscles that we identified were those that encircle the orbits of the eye. They are called orbicularis oculi. Orbicularis oculi, and there's another muscle that's called orbicularis oris that circles the oral cavity, are both what we call sphincter muscles. Sphincter muscles are round muscles, and we have several sphincter muscles in the body. Some of them are normally contracted, and when they contract during life, they are designed to either keep something, prevent something from moving to the next direction. For example, our esophagus is our food tube. It leads from our throat all the way down to our stomach. At the end of that hollow tube, we have a round sphincter muscle. When we begin to eat, as we are eating, the sphincter muscle is open to allow for the food to pass from the esophagus into the stomach. However, over a period of time, if we continue to eat prior to allowing our stomach to digest the contents that are already there, that muscle will gradually close. Because what it's saying is hey, you're eating too quickly. The stomach hasn't had an opportunity to try to break the food down that you've already eaten. So as a result, if we continue to eat, the food will just kind of pile up on top of this muscle, because the muscle is not going to relax until the stomach has had an opportunity to allow the food to be digested. So sphincter muscles, like I said, they can regulate when food or fecal matter or whatever passes from one organ to another. In this case, the sphincter muscles that encircle the eyes, orbicularis oculi, and the sphincter muscles that circle the mouth, orbicularis oris, are both responsible for helping to close that cavity. So orbicularis oris in conjunction with other muscles as well, but it helps to close the eye, and orbicularis oris helps us to close the mouth. And in addition to that, it helps with puckering, like kissing. Okay. So we've done occipitofrontalis. Then we also have orbicularis oculi, orbicularis oris. In addition to those muscles, we also talked about zygomaticus major and zygomaticus minor. Zygomaticus major is telling you that it's located on the zygomatic bone. It's the most lateral of the face of the zygomatic group, because there are 4 muscles, but we're only going to identify 2 of them here. Zygomaticus major is also referred to as the laughing muscle. This muscle inserts at the corners of the mouth to help us raise our mouth superiorly when we smile. It's called the laughing muscle because a lot of times if you smile real hard and real big for a long time, that muscle will start to ache, and you can literally see it quiver because it's working so hard. So if there's a major muscle, there's also a minor muscle. The major muscle is the one that is doing the majority of the work, while the minor muscle, which is zygomaticus minor, is just medial to zygomaticus major. And all it does is assist zygomaticus major with pulling the corners of the mouth in superior direction. In addition to those muscles, we also talked about buccinator, which is located in the soft area of the cheek. Oftentimes, this is the area that you'll find a dimple in, and it's the flaw in that muscle. That's what a dimple is. It's actually a flaw in a muscle that creates that concave region that we refer to as a dimple. We also identified, orbicularis oculi, oris, occipitofrontalis, zygomaticus major, zygomaticus minor. The broad flat muscle of the neck, this referred to as platysma. That's this muscle that you see right here, the broad flat muscle of the neck. And I believe there is one more that I'm missing. Masseter, no, that's the muscle of mastication to help raise the mouth. Platysma. Then maybe that's it. That may be it. Let me look at my face real quick. Oris, oculus, buccinator, masseter. That should be it. If I've missed anything, please let me know. Send me an email. But whatever the muscles of facial expression are in the text are the ones that you are required to know. I thought there were 8 of them. Oris, oculi, occipitofrontalis, zygomaticus major, zygomaticus minor, platysma. Maybe they were all in 6. Then that will conclude the information that will take us up to the midterm morning class. I am still going to post that the worksheet that I was telling you. So please make sure that you look for that on Blackboard. It'll be under the course documents section as well. Okay, well, hopefully, if we don't have another weather event, I will see everybody next class. Wednesday class, we'll have to work things out because we're a couple of classes behind, a couple of class periods behind. Morning class, remember, midterm is on Wednesday, and we will be reviewing on Monday. This video will be up and available to you. I'll make it available then up until the hour of class for the midterm. So hopefully I'll see you soon. Have a great day.